So, hello there, and welcome back to another Night of the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I give you my thoughts on all 4 seasons of Succession. But before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, that if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello there to my viewers, but heck, you're just not in the right place right now, and you don't have enough time wherever you may be to watch the full podcast on YouTube, then you can also podcast out audibly on Spotify and Night of the Movies on that platform. And if you are already listening on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also podcast out visually on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, wherever you may be watching or listening to the podcast, please feel free to like, subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, of course. And also, if you enjoy the podcast, do leave me some feedback on things to improve on, because there's always stuff to improve on in anything I do. And also, give me some suggestions of topics and stuff you might want me to talk about in future podcasts, or film you might want me to review in a future podcast. I'd love to have some suggestions, and I'd love to have some comments in the comment section on YouTube. You know, any sort of comments, whether it's feedback or suggestions, or give me some feedback in the feedback section on Spotify if there is one. But anyway, yes, you get the point. Give me some feedback and give me some suggestions, because I'd love to have them. But anyway, as I've already mentioned in today's podcast, I am going to be giving my thoughts on all 4 seasons of Succession, now that the show has officially ended. And so I should say here, right off the bat, that this is a non-spoiler review. I won't be going into spoilers, and I'm not going to go into great detail either on this review, because what is there to say about Succession that everybody else hasn't already said? Because I'm pretty sure it's the most popular TV show in the world right now, and there's a reason why. It's absolutely magnificent TV. It is so fantastic to watch, and the reason it's so good, and the reason it's so compelling, and the reason it's so masterfully made, and the reason it works is because it is so masterfully made, and it's because, you know, it's got all that brilliant acting in, and people are just perfectly cast, and also because it's a show about unlikable characters who do some really terrible things, but you can't help but find enjoyment in watching these characters there. And that's how you know it's a good show, because you enjoy watching these characters, and the reason you do enjoy watching these very unlikable characters is because of the writing. It is an excellently written show. Couldn't even say the word there. It's an excellently written show that just, it never really slipped whatsoever. It never jumped the shark, and I'm so glad that it ended on a high note as well. Like the finale, which happened a couple of days ago now, that this podcast has released. You know, the finale was absolutely amazing, and also it stuck the landing, and it worked. You know, let's all not forget the Game of Thrones finale, which didn't really work and was rushed, and that last season of Game of Thrones was so poor, and yet you watch the last season of Succession, and it is still firing on almost all cylinders. It is so good to watch still. It continued to be good. It never really jumped the shark, and it had a finale which stuck the landing and worked and left you with a bad taste in your mouth, but intentionally. I reckon the creators were intentionally making us feel bad at the end because of some of the things that happened. But that finale was intense, it was suspenseful, I couldn't keep my eyes off the screen, and, you know, it was just under 90 minutes finale, and yet not a moment was boring whatsoever in that finale. It was all constantly riveting to watch, and I mean, the whole last season was constantly riveting as well. There is one decision that was made in the last series which annoyed me, but at the same time, though, makes a lot of sense. So I understand why they did it, and I do agree with why they did it, and you'll probably know what decision I'm talking about. It's something to do with Logan Roy that I think happens in episode 3. And if you don't know, I'll be very surprised, because it was all over the news once it happened. But I'm still not going to go into spoilers just in case you don't know. But there's something that happens with Logan Roy, Brian Cox's character, in episode 3. And although I don't like that decision, it was also perfect, at the same time. It's that weird mix. You get a lot in the show, you don't like the decisions the characters make. You really don't like the characters most of the time, but you enjoy watching them. And I mean, that's the same with the whole show, There's so many things in the show that you really detest, but also you can't help but find so compelling, and that's what makes the series work, and that is all down to the writing. The show is so well written, and I mean, it's one of the best written shows of the past 5 years. It really is. 6 years, 6 years, because the show began in 2018 now, June 2018, so almost 6 years ago. It's one of the best shows of the past 6 years, and that's all down to the writing, because it is so well written and it's so well staged, and the direction of the show is brilliant as well. A lot of episodes are directed by Mark Milord. I might pronounce the director's name wrong, and I do apologise if I am, but he directed the last episode. I'm pretty sure he did anyway. Although he directed the majority of episodes though, and there's this flair of the direction where it's almost documentary style, and it's like it's catching people in the act, and that's what I really love about the show's direction. I also love the musical score that you get in the show, or the musical motifs that you get from, I think it's Nicholas Patel, who also did the score for Andor last year, which had a very different Star Wars musical score. And the musical score for this show is very, very good, because it perfectly encapsulates certain moments in the show, and it's used so massively, the score, especially with the direction, and just the whole filmmaking behind the show is so masterful. And then you marry that up to the writing, and you get a show which is just magnificent. And not only is the writing brilliant, and not only is the musical score brilliant, not only is the filmmaking brilliant as well, the acting is so on point, and the casting is so on point as well. You cannot imagine any other actors playing these characters. You really can. And like, Brian Cox was the perfect choice to play Logan Roy. He is perfect as that character, and he's so good, Brian Cox. I haven't seen him a lot, but I might go and check out a few of the stuff he's done in the past after seeing him in this role, because he is a force of nature as Logan Roy. But also, Jeremy Strong is great as Kendall Roy. I'm not a huge fan of Jeremy Strong, apparently, especially after I heard he was doing method acting, which is a type of acting which really annoys me, just in general, but that's another topic for another day. But he is great in the show. Although, I don't understand how he would method act with the character he's playing. I don't understand what that would be like. But still, he is great as Kendall Roy, and he brings a lot of power to his performance as well. Kieran Culkin, who, I didn't really know, I haven't really seen him in loads, but while I've seen him in the past, I never really liked him until I saw him in Succession. I didn't know he could be this good in the series. And it's just, again, he is so, magnetic to watch. But I think the most magnetic performance out of the Roy family in the last series of Succession was Sarah Snook as Shiv Roy. She is the star and the standout in this final series. I mean, everyone's great. Everyone, has given off an amazing performance in the final season of Succession. But she is the standout. Every time she's on screen, you are so glued to her. This is this power and this dominance which she brings when she's on screen, and a lot of that is down to the writing, but also a hell of a lot of that is also down to Sarah Snook's performance. And I mean, all the performances are great as well. Other people I haven't mentioned, Nicholas Braun as Greg, and also Matthew McFadden, who I'm a huge fan of, as Tom, who is Shiv's husband, or kind of husband in this series, in the last series of Succession. Greg and Tom are characters which I really enjoy watching, but also get really annoyed by, but intentionally, And I think, particularly Matthew McFadden, he was also really excellent in this last season of Succession. I mean, he won an Emmy for season 3 of Succession, and I actually think he's better in this last season than he was in season 3. So I wouldn't be surprised if he wins another Emmy. But the best performance of the bunch, of the main cast, is by far and away, I got a name off the top of my head right now, but Sarah Snook as Shiv Roy. Just remember that, Sarah Snook as Shiv Roy. And I just think the series is such an amazing watch. It's one of the best TV shows of the past 6 years, and there's a reason why everyone already talks about it. I mean, I've got to admit, personally, sometimes I get a bit confused by all the business logistics and all the political stuff, particularly in this last season, Succession, but I'm always interested in the relationships, and I always find, the characters so compelling to watch. So even when I get a bit confused, I'm really compelled into what's going on, though. I still find it all fascinating in some sort of way. And, even though this last season's Succession isn't my favourite season of the show, I still personally think the first series is the best, because I remember watching that first series, watching the first couple of episodes, not really knowing what to expect. I mean, I heard a lot of people praise it and stuff like that, but I didn't really know what to expect with the first series. Watched the first couple of episodes, and I was like, okay, and then I got to series 1, episode 4, and I was like, you've hooked me now. That is an episode of TV. That is how you do a masterful episode of TV. And series 1, I think, was just an incredible piece of TV. Like, it was amazing, and the ending of series 1 really shook me as well. And I'm not saying that the other series jumped the shark or anything. They just didn't shake me as much as that first series. And the first series I found really a bit of a roller coaster to watch in terms of emotion, and I found all the other series a roller coaster to watch in terms of emotion as well, but just not as much. But the show never really jumped the shark, and season 4, I did think going into season 4 that it might jump the shark. I think because of Game of Thrones syndrome. We had that last season of Game of Thrones season 8, and it did jump the shark, and I thought that Succession was going to fall into the same trap, particularly as they're both HBO shows, but it didn't. And in fact, I think that season 4 Succession was a slight step up over season 3. Again, season 3 was still phenomenal, but season 4 was even more phenomenal, you know what I mean? It's also a funny show as well. There's some great comedy which works. And, my brother said this to me. He said that it's like Arrested Development, if anyone watched that show. Jason Bateman. It's like that show, but much more serious and much more heart-wrenching at times. And that is the truth. It is very similar to Arrested Development in numerous ways. But at the same time, though, like I said before, it is more heart-wrenching than that show. There is a lot of heart-wrenching moments in this final season, particularly because it is the final season. You can tell they were writing to the finale in this last series. And I mean that in a really good way, I mean that in a positive way. There are certain moments in this final series and certain episodes which really send you on a whirlwind, which you sit there and you go, it's like, wow, this is just amazing, and you can't help but feel moved by what's going on. One of my favourite moments in this last series was the balcony scene between Shiv and Tom, which I'm not going to go into too much detail, but they let loose. Let's just say that. They let everything loose. And also, there's one really moving scene involving James Cromwell when he's giving a speech in a church. I'm trying not to say what's happening in that church in case you haven't seen the last series, but there's one very excellent scene with James Cromwell later in the show, and also the very final scene of the show with Jeremy Strong and with all the characters actually is really something else. I mean, the whole show is really something else. And although it's not personally my favourite TV show of the past, 5 to 6 years, it's still pretty amazing. I would still say it is one of the best TV shows of the past 5 to 6 years. If I was going to do a ranking of each season, I would say that the first season is still the best for me. Then it'll probably be season 4, season 2, and season 3. But the show never jumped the shark, and it stayed phenomenal throughout all of its run time, and I'm going to miss it. But I'm also glad that it ended when it did. I didn't want it to jump the shark, and maybe if it did another season, it would have, especially with some of the decisions made in the first couple episodes in this season. Like, I don't know how long they could have gone on with what they were doing later on in the season, but still, I'm very happy with how they left the show. And if you haven't seen Succession, you're missing out. You really are. I mean, I know I recommend a lot of TV shows on this channel, but this one, especially now it's all ended, you can just binge it if you haven't watched it already. You can just binge it all, and each season has so many brilliant episodes. I mean, there's some episodes which are better than Always Be Together of any TV show. There's so many amazing episodes in this series, though. There's so many episodes which are funny, heart-wrenching, heartbreaking, emotional, moving, but also really exciting to watch at times and really suspenseful. Particularly the finale of each series. The finale always delivered, and the last season, Succession, did deliver on its finale definitely as well. I mean, it's an amazing show, and yeah, I love it, and it's sad that it's gone, but I'm so happy with the way it ended. But just because the writing was just so on point. Yeah, magnificent piece of television. Really is. And so I'm going to say that all 4 seasons of Succession, I'm going to say that they were 9 out of 10. Yeah, I'm going to say that they're 9 out of 10. Honestly, it is really something else. And the cast is all just perfect. And, you know, I haven't gone into great detail in my view on all 4 seasons, but at the same time, you know, if I went into detail, I'll just go on and on about how this is perfect, and it become quite a boring view, but at the same time, you know, the show is perfect, especially for what it is. It's perfect for what it is. And yeah, I feel like I'm just rambling on now about how good this show is, but yeah, it's really something else. Absolutely love it. So glad that it stuck the landing. And yeah, one of the best TV shows to come out of the past 5 to 6 years. And a magnificent piece of TV that was compelling from start to finish, and so unexpected in so many moments, and it kept you guessing in the best way, so suspenseful in so many moments, and, you know, an all-round amazing TV show with an amazing finale. Yeah, Succession was pretty near perfect. In fact, yeah, it was what it was. And so, all in all, I loved Succession seasons 1 through to 4, and that's why I'm going to say that all 4 seasons of Succession are a 9 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that is it for today's podcast. I've got things I need to do right now, so I'm going to round everything up quite quickly. Thank you, as always, for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this podcast. And also look forward to many more podcasts coming very soon on this channel. I'll have my view of the Ted Lasso finale happening sometime later on this week. I'll have my view of that coming up. So yeah, 2 big finales in 1 week. The Succession finale we just had on Monday, and now we've got the Ted Lasso finale on Wednesday. I'm company course on Tuesday, so actually the Ted Lasso finale would have already happened, and I'm very much looking forward to that as well. So yes, 2 big finales in 1 week, which is kind of crazy to say, but look forward to my podcast on Ted Lasso season 3. Ted Lasso season 3 coming later this week. But until then, guys, thank you as always for watching or listening, and I suppose that's it. So I'll see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.